It has been a while since we got to talk to Pete Nakos. Much has changed in the transfer portal, and he is covering it all. Pete, I guess we start off with a move that happened on Thursday that everybody's celebrating, but I don't know if it means anything. Mike Norvell, Florida State coach, tweeted about a big man joining the Knoll family, and then later Florida State releases that Terrence Ferguson, Bama offensive lineman, has transferred to Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, a target that Florida State had on its board like minutes after he went in the portal. Just talked to some people in Tallahassee, and then Mike Norvell obviously welcomes him today and only sends up the hype train, the speculation train about will he go to Alabama or not.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Florida State fans were celebrating because that was the assumption that it meant he was not. I don't know that necessarily, like, you keep recruiting until you take another job. We don't know at this point, as we're recording this, what they're doing yet. Alabama, as far as we know, hasn't offered anybody the job. So Correct. We will find out later. But hopefully there will not be as much flippage as there's been in the transfer portal of late. One of the more interesting stories of the early week going to the national championship game was that Georgia had gotten a commit from Peyton Maiava, who was UNLV's quarterback last year as a freshman. It was great in that go-go offense that they run. But before I got a chance to talk to you, he flipped to USC.
He did. Spoke to Peyton Maiava's NIL representative late Monday night, early Tuesday morning. And he had flipped to Georgia, and I mean, no, he went from Georgia to USC, excuse me. And I mean, just what a crazy turn of events, and just talking to someone about it. And I think being able to work under Lincoln Riley really had a lot to do with that decision to flip from Georgia to USC. He's obviously already a West Coast guy though. And there's no doubt that he can challenge Miller Moss for the starting job, and he has everything that USC is looking for in a quarterback right now.
Well, and that's the thing. He's got 3 years of eligibility left, and he can actually compete with Miller Moss for the job right now. You can't compete with Carson Beck for the Georgia job right now. Like, that was going to be a competition with Alex Puglisi or Gunnar Stockton or whoever it is after Carson Beck. So yeah, that does seem like a good one. He's very good. He was so much fun to watch this year.
Yeah, I mean, right, Carson Beck came back to help his NFL draft stock. He's not going to lose out to a transfer. And then, you're right. I mean, Mountain West Freshman of the Year did so well in Brennan Marion's offense out in Las Vegas. And, I mean, he has so much upside too, right? Like, he accomplished so much as a freshman, but he's got the frame, he's got the athleticism. And all of a sudden, Lincoln Riley has his quarterback of the future.
Yeah, that's the thing. We were kind of wondering what USC was going to do there, because were they going to sign a 25 guy? Were they going to, bring somebody else out of the portal who was more of a veteran? But this is kind of the best of possible worlds in the portal, where you get a guy who can play, and he has 3 years left.
I mean, yeah, and there was like a lot of skepticism too about like, oh, what's going to happen? Malachi Nelson's gone. Juju Lewis isn't going to be in LA for a little bit. And Lincoln obviously did not stop recruiting Jaden once he committed to Georgia. And I think it's going to pay off in the long run. And obviously a lot more to build around this quarterback, but it's definitely a step in the right direction for Lincoln Riley.
So Tackett Curtis, who left USC, he was a linebacker from Louisiana, who was day one starter as a true freshman at USC this year. He's headed to Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one too, because I was told about like a week ago that this was going to come down to Ohio State and Wisconsin, and then talking to the Buckeyes and the Badgers earlier this week, both were like, oh yeah, we stopped talking to him and stuff. And I think that's really just a sign of how quiet Tackett Curtis and his family wanted to keep this. And obviously he's going to land in Madison, where was arguably the number 2 spot during his recruitment.
Yeah, that's what, because Ohio State and Wisconsin both recruited him out of high school as well. So that yet another three-year eligibility guy who's played some. That one, it seemed like everybody who recruited him out of high school jumped right back in as soon as he hit the portal. Now here's another one. We're back to Tallahassee. speaking of back to Tallahassee, but this is one that happened on Wednesday and got completely overshadowed by the Nick Saban news. But they were celebrating Tallahassee again because DJ Lundy, the linebacker, was going to transfer to Colorado and then changed his mind and decided to stay at Florida State.
Yeah, this was the one I don't think anyone really saw coming, except Florida State obviously had communication with him, and they did the favor of notifying Colorado before he withdrew from the portal. I think there's a couple factors in this, but at the end of the day, DJ Lundy is a veteran linebacker who really has so much experience and upside that I think Florida State realized they weren't going to get someone like him in the transfer portal and kind of started to have that conversation again after he committed to Colorado and was like, hey, like, how about you come home? We can make sure that you continue to build on a starting role, and we really want you here at Florida State.
Yeah, and that's pretty important, and we'll see what happens. But obviously, the Mike Norvell stuff still up in the air. With the Saban retirement, that opens the transfer portal for Alabama players, right, for 30 more days.
Correct.
So what are you hearing about? I would imagine there's a lot of schools that would like to see these guys transfer, but it seems like they're waiting to find out who's coming.
It's funny. I've actually had schools reach out to me and been like, who have you heard? I'm like, I have not heard anything. I'm not going to get in this. But yes, the 30-day window is now open. And obviously, I think a lot of athletes kind of want to wait and see who they're going to bring into Tuscaloosa. There's kind of a rumor that a decision is going to be made quickly, and that Greg Byrne might want someone announced by the end of the week. We'll see if that happens or not. But I think some athletes are definitely waiting to see if they move quickly in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and was thinking about that as I was, going over what Greg Byrne had said. And you do kind of have to move fast in a situation like this because the portal's not open for anybody else. It's
right.
just open for you right now. I guess if Jim Harbaugh were to leave for the NFL, then Michigan, guys, but they still have a couple more days, right, before the Michigan one closes.
Have till Michigan and Washington both have till Saturday, and I think the other really interesting part to me, and I'm sure you'll agree, is right, like classes started at Alabama on Wednesday, the same day they announced. So, like, I actually called the registrar office today and was like, when is the last day to withdraw? And that is January 17th. So, I mean, that student athlete, right, academics might play a factor, and we bring this up because a lot of athletes will want to get on campus for spring ball and things like that. And a lot of major top 25 programs also started classes this week.
Yeah, that's what I guess you have to be an expert on the drop ad deadline for all of these schools now. Because like the DJ Lundy decisions kind of, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, he's got to be in class. Like he's got to know what he's doing. So how many of decisions are we going to get here in the next week as guys have to make one if they want to be in class at their new place?
Wrote a little story on that today, and I was kind of like thinking about it in my head, and I was like, wow, like all these dominoes are going to fall in the next 7 days. So these athletes can withdraw. I mean, drop classes properly and not have a withdrawal on their transcript and get to, I don't know, whether it be Ohio State, Louisville, Michigan, Miami, Florida, you name it. But it's all going to happen quickly. And then the other, I mean, you mentioned it, right? Like Michigan and Washington, right? There's a domino effect here, right? So, I don't know, Kalen DeBoer, Mike Norvell, all of a sudden then you're going to have a 30-day window at those schools. And then, who does Michigan or Florida State hire? I mean, it's just going to, so much for it all ending January 2nd.
Yeah, exactly. And when there's other sides, it's funny because I was talking to an agent about this, and they were agents love cycles. They love it when stuff's moving around and there's a lot of moving pieces because they can slot their assistant coaches they represent into various staffs. And I had this agent say, "Man, I'd love another cycle." I texted back after Saban retired, said, "Looks like you got your cycle." So it is crazy. But I'll ask you this because I've been asked this a bunch lately about the transfer portal, and obviously there's a lot of angst about it happens during the postseason, and it happens, during this while schools are trying to sign their high school players. Could it be moved? Is there a way? Because obviously it's pegged around the semester break. That's the reason why it's where it is.
Yeah, another thing I was thinking about today. I was like, well, what if you move it to July, right? But the flip side of that is that's like the 1 month of the year that coaches actually step away for a minute.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that would be greenlit. I don't know how you move it, right? Like you brought it up. The main reason why it is where it is right now is because of how the academic calendar operates. And it's going to be even crazier next year, right? The national title game is going to be on January 20th. Okay, well, it's January 11th today. And classes already started for spring semester. So what if you go to the national title? I mean, so if you thought Malik Murphy's decision was tough this year, I mean, just wait till next year. You might have opt-outs out of a national title game.
Well, here's the thing, though. I was thinking about this as I was walking around on the field before the national title game and watching Dylan Morris warm up for Washington. Dylan Morris is already transferred to James Madison. He's already decided, presumably already enrolled. With the way you can take online classes now, could it be possible that you could just leave it where it is? And in those situations, guys can decide where they're going to go. And if the coach is cool with it, they just keep playing on the team they were on.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely going to be viable and something we see a lot. I guess my personal takeaway, Andy, is it just brings up the whole other conversation of is it time for college football to break away from the NCAA?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Because you could actually have different rules about that. I still think you have to have a CBA before you can do that sort of player movement and control it in that way. Otherwise, you're just going to get sued again. But it is really interesting because you may have to, like the model that Oklahoma State because Gundy did this for the bowl game this year, where if guys wanted to go on visits or play and still play for Oklahoma State, they could. Eli Drinkwitz did it with Missouri for the Cotton Bowl and said you can visit other schools, you can figure out your situation. Just this is when we need you back for practice, and you're welcome to play with us. I think if coaches could do that and accept that, then you probably could make it work.
Yeah. Wouldn't just throwing this out there, wouldn't something like a lot of graduations late April, early May, like what if you moved the portal to May and June and then you did your high school camps and then everyone could step away for a minute?
I think they sue you again. That's what I think, because they're going to want to move and be in spring practice. So I just that's the problem at this point. Post that Supreme Court ruling, anything they do that is perceived as restricting the athlete's movement is going to get you sued. And the only way to not be sued is a CBA or an antitrust exemption. They're not getting the antitrust exemption, most likely. The CBA would be the other solution, but that requires a lot more changes. So I don't know. I think it's going to be something that they're dealing with until they get to whatever the big changes are. And that's what you were talking about. The NCAA convention's going on this week. Not something we normally cover on this show, because I know it puts a lot of the viewers to sleep. But this is the time when, I thought it was interesting, and Pete, you cover NIL. They did fast track and say, hey, the stuff that the president, Charlie Baker, suggested, maybe the direct schools handling NIL is something that can happen fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that could happen soon. The D1 Council is going to start taking some measures, and it's just so, I mean, it's like the two sides, right? And then on the same day, a couple representatives on Capitol Hill announced another draft discussion, and they're going to have a legislative hearing next week, and that would not allow for Charlie Baker's new subdivision of sports to be allowed. And then, I mean, you heard Jim Harbaugh on Tuesday at the Champions press conference. He's pushing for unions. I mean, a real watershed moment, I think you could say right now in college football.
Yeah, they'll have to figure it out. I think what you said about college football just being something separate from the NCAA is probably something that they're headed toward, but they're just not. There are going to be some fits and starts before they get there. So you and I will be covering a probably very hectic transfer portal this time next year.
Yeah, and this one isn't stopping anytime soon.
I know. Well, that's the thing. I mean, depending on what happens at Alabama and Michigan, if Alabama, we're assuming they're going to hire a sitting Power 5 coach. I mean, there's always maybe they would promote Tommy Rees. I mean, that's the one I can think of that would stop the cycle. But more than likely, they hire, and I said Power 5. I can't say that anymore. More than likely, they hire a power conference coach who's already a head coach. And then that will probably cause it, like if it were Washington or if it were Florida State, and we don't know if it is, but that's something that another power conference head coach might want.
Yeah.
So you just dominoes start going like crazy and transfer portal windows start opening.
Yeah, it's a little crazy too. And then you really start to have these conversations too of like, oh, is this, I mean, I don't want to go all preacher on you, but like, is it really the best thing for the athlete anymore, right? Like if Mike Norvell takes the Alabama job, like DJ Uiagalelei, like what it might actually have to like rethink what he's going to do in 2024. Right. Do you know how crazy that is to actually like put out there? Crazy.
Yeah. And he's already, this is his third school, and he's already made, gone through the decision-making process and gotten to here. But I'm sure, and this is the way I think about it, like Mike Norvell didn't know that Nick Saban was going to retire. Kalen DeBoer didn't know that Nick Saban was going to retire. If one of them winds up getting the job, I mean, it's really, really hard to turn down Alabama. So what are you going to do? Like,
yeah, it's a wild world we live in right now.
It sure is. And I'm glad you are here to decipher it. Speaking of deciphering, Pete, I want to decipher some Lane Kiffin tweets with you. This has become a new feature with us. So Tyler Barron is an edge rusher from Tennessee who committed to Ole Miss. Now, there's the ad drop date becomes a factor again. He's got some friends who played at Tennessee who were looking at Louisville. There was some smoke that maybe Tyler Barron was looking to flip to Louisville. So we got a tweet from Tyler Barron. It's the checkered flag, the finish line, and it says from Oxford, Mississippi. Just bear that in mind. Now we got a tweet from Lane Kiffin. You ready, Pete?
Yep.
It is Brad Pitt with the letter K from Moneyball. What do we think this means?
At this time, Lane Kiffin is pissed off, and the athlete may not have talked to him for maybe 24 hours. And Lane is extremely confused what
this
Tyler
is yesterday,
Barron's
right?
Is. Yeah, it is yesterday. What a time to be alive. Yes. It seems like 2 years ago. Yeah. That was yesterday.
And so now we have another tweet from Lane Kiffin shortly after that, another Moneyball tweet. This is Jonah Hill celebrating, and it's Kiffin with laughing emojis. Location, guys.
And all of a sudden, Lane Kiffin realizes he got him. He's on campus, and Tyler Barron's going to be a rebel.
Can't make it up, folks. The only question is Lane Kiffin going to be the Alabama coach?
I guess for viewers, real quick, Tyler Barron visited Louisville last weekend.
Yeah.
That was why there's speculation about where he's going to go, and Wesley Walker and Tamarian McDonald took those visits with him. And they obviously are at Louisville now.
Yeah. Well, and Louisville's the other like really active portal. Like I would say Ole Miss and Louisville are kind of the portal champs so far for this offseason.
Yes, 100%. And if Lane somehow ends up at Alabama, then I think Louisville will outright have that title.
It's unbelievable. Because then the Ole Miss portal would open. God dang. It never stops. It never stops. Pete, thank you so much.
Walter Nolan will be back on the market. All right.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Put him back at number 1 in the transfer portal rankings.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pete.
So thanks so much, Andy. Have a good one.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples On 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.